It's time, to talk all things education. And this morning we're going to be looking at something very, very important, especially because schools are, back in session. Schools are resuming, and so parents, teachers, school management, they're all gearing up to have, the children back in school, create a conducive and safe environment for them, to thrive in learning. However, there is an aspect of, that whole resumption school mix that is very important. Sometimes the least attention is paid to it, but this morning we want to take a critical look at it and what more can be done to help this very important component in the learning equation. This morning we're talking teaching profession strategies for developing leadership skills. And when we say leadership, is away from the title, but more to do with being a leader in that environment. Now, joining us to do justice to this topic, we have Dr. Toyin Sam Emehelu. She's so much more, but I decided to cut all of all her titles. I said cut it short in righteousness. So I'm just going to say she's an education and mentorship a leadership mentor, but she is so much more. She's a seasoned educationist, trained, certified. Any way you can think about education, she's all of that and so much more. Dr. Toyin, I welcome you to the program this morning.
Wow, thanks. Great having you. Thank you. Good morning, Precious.
Indeed.
Good morning, everyone.
Indeed. I'm so excited to see you because, I always get encouraged when I see people who have been in the education sector. Before now, you'd hear, the teacher's reward is in heaven. Having been told that repeatedly, the teachers are just say, oh, really? So what are we doing here on earth if our reward is in heaven? Yeah. We must repeat here. But then, so which in itself maybe have discouraged a lot of people, away from profession, say, you know what, I beg, let me get onto something else. Then for some people, it has also become, okay, let me just use it as a stopgap, something to tide me over, pending when I move on to something. But I was particularly encouraged when I spoke with you on Thursday to find that you have several certifications in education. And I'm like, oh my God, you want to tell us about some of those certifications?
Okay, yes, so you are right on that. Interestingly, I didn't also want to be a teacher.
Wow. Wow.
So when I get to tell people this, it's always like, are you for real? Mm-hmm. So my mom happened to have started at school while I was in year 9, which used to be GS3. Mm-hmm. And my journey started when I had the first set of students I had were adult students.
Wow.
Basically people that couldn't read and write, but they are already in their adulthood. So we had a strategy when we were about to start the school. Okay, let's have adults come in, and then let's see how we can then enroll their children for the main full resumption. To cut the long story short, in the space of about a month, they were able to read and write. I knew there was something I did that was quite magical, but then because of the stigma, the financial implication, and what have you, I was a science student, right? So I just wanted to do maybe something around microbiology or pharmacy or something just different from having to teach. But then I discovered that when I got into, out of all my siblings, I was the one that didn't get to pass the joint admission matriculation board exams. And so I had to go for my A-levels. And then, you know how we say it, I was given education. So the first year in school, I struggled a bit, having to study education biology. But then during my second year, I stumbled on a book, The PurposeDriven Life by Rick Warren. And by the time I read that book, I discovered it spoke about shape. We talked about your spiritual gifts, your heart, your attitude, your personality, and then, of course, your experiences, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it was that point I knew I was wired for this. I was cut out for this. Mind you, my mom, like I said, now she has 2 schools. My elder sister has a school in Abuja. I mean, my uncles were all teachers, but there was something I did. I knew I didn't want to just be that ordinary teacher. Since it was like, oh, wow, this is my reality. But then, hey, how can I increase my momentum so that I am not just like another ordinary teacher out there? So the first thing I embraced was lifelong learning. Okay, no, before lifelong learning, I embraced having a vision, my own personal vision. What exactly do I want out of life? And then To follow suit, I embraced lifelong learning. And then I kept digging deeper, searching deeper to who am I really? And that was when I discovered that, I wanted to know how would you just have a conversation with someone and then learning takes place. So while I was still in my undergrad year studying education biology, I started reading books on educational psychology. And so I finished serving on a Friday, and then on a Monday, I started my master's in educational psychology.
Wow. Wow.
And then fast forward to last year, I got my doctorate in educational planning and management from PurposeDriven University in the United States of America.
Amazing.
So that has been my journey, kind of. And I'm so grateful and glad now that I've been able to mentor close to over 200 teachers, even outside of Nigeria. Name it, with technology, we are limitless. And so this has been one of the things that has helped me over time to be able to, deploy my gift, not just for myself, but for every other teacher out there that, are ready to take on the profession, own it,
Indeed.
and then, of course, leverage on it and be the best out of it. In fact, while I was still on my way driving down here, immediately I got here, someone came into my inbox and said, I've heard so much about you.
Wow.
I'm a teacher. Can you please mentor me?
Wow.
And those kind of experiences gladdens my heart. And fast forward in 2012, I registered my consulting business, even though my education consulting business, even though I was still heading a school at that time. And then I resigned fully in 2018 to run a full education consulting outfit called Skills Transformational Academy Limited. So that has been my journey, kind of.
And it's really been a very amazing and interesting journey. I would say, God, that everyone in that line, the teaching line, would understand that it goes beyond being in the walls of, the four walls of a classroom. It goes beyond, standing in front of a board and then teaching. It goes beyond all of that.
Yes.
It's a calling, so to speak. It's a blessing in itself. Just to think that you have young futures in your hand, that you have the opportunity to mold.
Yes.
It's so much more than that. And, a lot of times, because of the climate that we live in, you find that, that pride of place is really not given to teachers.
Exactly.
That appreciation, incentivization that ought to come to them is not given to them. And so, bearing all of that in mind, you say you mentor teachers.
Yes.
I want you to talk to us about the mindset of some of these teachers that you've had the opportunity to mentor.
Yes.
What has been their mindset concerning the job, and how has that changed in the course of their journey?
Okay, so I am an advocate of inclusive education. So many times when we talk about education, we look closer at the private sector. But remember, we have the public sector, we have the low-cost schools. We have a school as low as 100 naira per day. And so when I get to talk about it, and by the grace of God, I've been able to work across all spectrum, whether low cost, I've had projects I've worked on, private and in the public space. The current Commissioner of Education for Lagos is like a direct mentor to me, and I've been privy to be able to have some of this facilitation and training sessions with them. So like you mentioned, the truth is, it all starts from the place of self-discovery. There's a way our lives have, especially for those of us in this climate, we have belittled our potentials as human beings to just being able to make ends meet. And whenever that is the case, the challenge is always the fact that we don't see beyond our daily needs. But then no man, I repeat, no human being can live to his full potentials until he or she has come to a place of self-discovery, a place of purpose, a place of... so that just gives you leverage. Because if you don't live meaningfully, if your day-to-day activities is not born out of a why, which is deeper than just, let me just get this done, it's very difficult and very tough. So what we do when we mentor teachers is the first thing we do is to help you really, really discover the gold mine in you. And we do that using nothing less than close to 7 psychometric tests, cutting from the DISC to the shape test, cutting across a range of tests. Now, the beautiful thing is education is very broad. is very wide. So even as a teacher, you don't necessarily have to be limited to just the four walls of the physical classroom. I mean, do you know that even you ladies, what you're doing is education?
Oh, yeah.
Because every single morning when you wake up, you come here to tell, I mean, the whole world about things happening around the world. So we try to help them not see in a very myopic sense, but broaden their horizons, and then help them to also see areas in which they can specialize. Because, I mean, when we talk about specialization in education, it's so much from edutech to special education to preschool, early years education, to the secondary education, to the tertiary education, to edutech. So, I mean, it is massive. So it's about, okay, so what is that green area for me where I can key in, live meaningfully, work meaningfully, and then sincerely, when you are able to identify what exactly it is you want to do, there's your ideas juice will overflow. And that has been what has happened to me in the past years. I've written over 20 books, and people get to ask, how? You know? So it comes from a place of depth.
Okay.
And if you don't dig deep, unfortunately, you keep scratching the surface, and you don't have all the time in the world.
Sure.
Yes, you don't. All right. I'd like to know from your experience, you know, in dealing with, in mentoring other teachers and all of that. You've talked about self-discovery and about people realizing the why, you know, their purpose.
Yes.
What I want to know is things like the method of imparting information.
Yes.
Has that come up in your observation? Is it, I want to believe it's unique to each individual, like the way in which they communicate and the way in which they pass that information. So how do you maybe harness that particular aspect of teaching?
Yes,
you know,
amazing.
because some teachers, they don't just, you can't understand them. I remember we had some teachers, it was like,
what exactly, yes.
What in the world?
So what I always say is, everyone can learn, but not everyone can teach. So aside from the fact that teaching is a calling or is also ingrained in purpose, what is most important is that there is a methodology, which we call the pedagogy of education. That is the way in which knowledge is being transferred. So remember what I said, that it got to a time in my life I felt, well, how would you just talk to someone and learn it? Has taken place. So that took me into the world of educational psychology. And I'm always very excited to talk about this because there is a mechanism from acquisition of knowledge to retention of knowledge to recall.
Yes.
So these three phases is something that an average teacher cannot under or overemphasize. Now, when you talk about someone being able to impact that knowledge, and I always say that every teacher learns twice. While you're preparing, you are learning. While you are having to talk, you are also learning. As a matter of fact, the 21st century teacher is just a facilitator of knowledge. So if you take a look at our conversation, you do a bit of talking, I do a bit of listening, you do a bit of talking. So there's also something called teacher talk. It will shock you that within a 45 minutes lesson, educational psychology says that a teacher's talk must not be more than 15 minutes. In other words, the children or the student should do more of the talking while you direct the conversation. Interestingly, the person that asks the questions has an upper hand in the conversation, but a lot of people don't know that. So sincerely, when it comes to having to, and then of course, the learning styles, you have to take into cognizance the learning styles. I was facilitating the session that was last week, Friday, at an early years annual conference. And I told them that the best way in which you can impact knowledge is to, first of all, identify how you, as the teacher, how do you acquire knowledge? So I asked them, so from what you have observed, how do you think I acquired it? And of course, they told me it's kinesthetics, because if not for the fact that we are having this interview, you would see that I'm having to move my body. Right? And then when you understand your own way of learning, then you can begin to identify the different way in which children in your classroom learn. Now, the question that always come along is, but I have just 45 minutes to complete this session. So how do I get the students, all the students in my class, because we talk a lot about student-centered learning and individualized learning. So what I say is, bring in different learning styles within that your 45 minutes. So while a child that likes movement, learn through movement, take them outdoor within the 45 minutes. Even if it's 5 minutes, that child will learn whatever you are saying within that 5 minutes. For a child that has a lot more to do with visuals, can use a bit of technology. For the child that loves, audio, could you do a bit of podcasting where the child can just listen? For the child that likes nature, could you bring something that has to do with nature into the class, or even make the class environment for that lesson
I'm going to have to
outdoor?
ask you to pause, and we need to go for a very quick break. When we return,
Yes.
the discussion continues. Join us again.
Okay.
Yes, we are back and our discussion continues. We are taking a look at the teaching profession, leadership, and of course, developing strategies to acquiring, such leadership skills. And Dr. Tene, let me just allow you round up on what you were saying, and then we'll move on to the reason why we're here today.
Okay, could you just please, because I lost a bit of...
Yes, we're talking about the learning process for some children, audio, visual.
Yes, exactly. I was talking about the naturalistic, that you could, in fact, take your class to an environment where nature speaks. Sincerely, we just have to be creative. That little here, that little there. Before you know what's happening, what you are really after is to ensure that learning takes place.
It makes all the difference.
And no matter how big or how small a school is, the fundamental principle that cuts across every school is the desired learning outcomes, right? So, but some schools are a lot more privileged to have resources than others, and that's where the place of improvisation comes to play, right? And I mean, I always say that we're doing a lot of injustice to the next generation because we pay lip service to what should be our priority. All of us in the next 30 years, have you thought about it? It's these children in the classroom that are going to be taking over. And whether we like it or not, they will be the ones directing us, telling us what to do, making decisions, policies, and what have you on our behalf.
And it's going to be based on what we have taught them.
Absolutely.
Based on what they have learned. Which
Absolutely.
brings me to, my next question. It's going to be a two-pronged question, really.
Yeah.
When we say leadership, a lot of times, whether in school, politics, life as we know it, for some people, it's the perks, the privilege, and all the pomp and pageantry associated with that title, that they think about. They don't think of it as service. Now, bring that kind of scenario into the school environment. Sometimes we've had it play out, with the head teacher, the principal, the classroom teacher, even the prefect, the head boy, the head girl. They not even understand that leadership is not about perks, but it's about service. So, what would ideal leadership in the school environment be like?
That's massive, because leadership cuts across, in fact, I don't even know where to start from. I'll start from anywhere, because my head is just thinking of so many things. Okay, so to put my thoughts together, the first thing I would like to say is leadership is about being before doing, right? And then when we talk about leadership in the school setting, leadership is about influence. And every human being on the surface of the earth have the capacity to lead, but not everyone can lead. Because leadership comes with a sense of, I think I'm good to talk about this. This is a Christian-based TV, audience. When Jesus mentioned the fact that the Son of Man have come to serve and not to be served, and to give his life as a ransom for many. The truth is, leadership, especially in education, comes with a lot of burden. For those who understand the magnitude and the gravity of what someone with a sense of leadership carries. Now, it's so interesting to know that right from the very top person within the school, just the presence of the person carries an aura and either transforms an environment or brings it down to decadence. Leadership is that powerful. You see a lot of people imitate leaders, and it comes with, it's just so, how will I put it now? Sometimes it looks so transcendent. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but it happens. You see people talk the way a leader walks the way a leader walks, even dresses the way a leader dresses. And so for every person that is an educational leader, that person should know that he or she is an embodiment of being a role model. And the person should be able to live circumspectly. I say it with all sense of respect, circumspectly, because every little action, every single word, every single thought carries in it a lot of power. And so, however or whichever way that top leader sees himself, transcends into the entire school environment. And so every leader must work and walk with a sense of high responsibility, starting with a vision. A vision for him or herself, and then a vision for the school community. Right? And then from the vision, he must be able to break it down into tangible goals. Now, a lot of us are conversant with SMART goals, but now there's a higher level. It's called the smarter goals, where whatever goals...
Is that an acronym for something?
Yes.
Just go ahead
the
and
S
yes.
means specific. The M means measurable. The A is achievable. The R is realistic. The T is time-bound. And now we have the ER. The E means to evaluate. And the R means to reward.
Wow.
Right? And as a leader, you need to learn how to give your team the reward while you take on and take responsibility for the challenges. So if you get to look at everything that I've shared now, you realize that leadership is not for the...
It's not a walk in the park.
Okay, I want to quickly, I want to ask my last question, and that has to do with curriculum, right? Because that is something that a lot of teachers are bound by. You're given a set of, goals. This is what you have to. This is the information you need to pass across within this specific time. Yes. So, in your experience and in your mentorship programs and all of that, how do you look at that concept of curriculum, and the kind of curriculum that is suited for a situation, like you rightly said, maybe it's teacher-based or learner-based or, whatever. How can that come in, especially when so many teachers are literally bound by the curriculum sent to them by the Ministry of
Creativity.
Exactly. So how do you, I know it's a bit vague, I'm trying to, but just try and steer us.
Yes. So what I always say is a curriculum is just like a template.
Yes.
And while a lot of teachers have that mindset that they are limited by it. I would say you can always find your way around it.
Okay.
Right? Now, like I said, if for any school or any curriculum, yes, we have, it's quite unfortunate too, that for us as a nation, you know, those that actually churn out these curriculums, well, I don't want to say that they are not that expert, you know, but with whatever they have done or with whatever you are given, it's left for you to fine tune it. It's left for you to find a way in which you can make that content come alive, right? Related to real life situations. Use stories, use tech, use illustrations, use quotes, use diverse things to make the curriculum come alive. And the curriculum is not a cast in stone, right? And that is why as an educator, you have a brain. Like I always tell people that we allow the lawyers to take that my learned colleague. Right?
Yes.
Educators are really the ones that should say, my learned colleagues.
Yes.
Why? Because we are dynamic, we are diverse, we are not limited. So once you carry that mindset, I mean, I've been privileged to teach from a 2-year-old to, I mean, right now I teach adults. So I've been able to teach across the spectrum. And it's still the same thing. So what I just do is I take what I have to give me the result of what I want. And once I do that, I discover that the student that I teach part-time
Do better.
And so it's not just even about grades. It's about building a holistic human being.
Indeed.
That is able to have character, values, that is able to interact, that is able to communicate, that has good self-esteem, that is able to realize that, yes, beyond whatever it is that I'm learning, there is also a dimension, right, that I know that I'm not in control of. And then what do I do in that dimension?
Which brings me, you know, having said that brings me, you know, it's just a definition of leadership in a nutshell.
Exactly.
In wrapping up this conversation, because I know that time is not our friend, but we can go on. I mean, when it comes to education, just bring me in and, you know, but in wrapping up this conversation, everything you have said in a nutshell describes who a leader is.
Absolutely.
Especially in the education sector.
Absolutely.
How can, you know, the teachers we have now, how can they develop strategies to become this that you have defined? Yes.
So,
I know it's your trade secret,
yes.
but just give us a few.
So sincerely, before I became this, it's been a lot of investment, right? Such that at the spur of the moment, I'm able to respond. So I'm actually talking from the abundance of what is on the inside. Okay? So the first step is just embrace it. Embrace what you're doing. Let it be meaningful to you. Come to a place where you're not just seeing what you're doing as just a stopgap, but you're seeing it that you are being a transgenerational individual. Seeing that your legacy will outlive you, even while you're not, even when you're no more here physically, right? Every day of our lives is a gift. And then, so that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about writing books, about having my content out there, about sharing stuff that I know, because I know someone someday, somewhere, somehow, right now that we even have the clouds, will stumble on it. And then what happens when such person is like, oh my world, this is massive. So embrace, take ownership. Next, begin to invest. And when I say invest, people think just money. But not just money, time, energy. I do videos, and the kind of videos I do are not prayer videos. I do intellectual videos where I read, where I study, right? Even after my master's degree, I just finished a 1-year full course on politics, policy, and governance, because I know that it has gotten to a place where I can't keep this stuff. I have to position myself in a place where my ideas, my ideology, my thoughts will carry weight and geometrically impact children across states, local governments, and nations of the world. Now, that is that is the phase I'm in right now. So because some people are like, okay, so after your doctorate, what next? And I know this is what is next, because I don't have all the time. And I can't just keep working solo or keep just doing something in my little corner and expect that I'll be able to be a transformational education leader over time. So in a nutshell, own it. One. Number two, invest time and energy. Invest resources. And then number three, it's just a matter of time. I mean, when you are valuable, value comes to you, right?
Indeed.
The intangible births the tangible.
And the teachers, I hope you've heard Dr. Twing this morning. When you're what again? When you're
when you are valuable, value comes to you. Yeah, I think that's a quotable quote. Tweetable quote.
Yes, when you're valuable, value comes to you.
Exactly. And it's not the other way around. Trying to chase money. And
money will chase you. I mean, value will chase you. So the bottom line is understanding what your calling is, embracing it, investing time, resources, money in self-development. It makes you a better teacher. I mean, we've seen people whose students have come back to say thank you.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just vocal thank you. It came with a whole lot more. But that's not the incentive here. Bottom line is you're shaping futures.
Exactly.
You need to take charge and run with it. Dr. Twing, thank you so much for being here.
I
mean, I wish this conversation would not end, but there are other segments to the morning show. But thank you very much for
having me.
Giving us a better understanding of what the teaching profession is, and of course strategies for developing leadership skills. Defining for us really what leadership is. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Indeed. I mean, we did have Dr. Toyin Same Mehelu. She is an education and leadership mentor. This and so much more she is. We had her on the program this morning to take us through, the teaching profession. What is leadership and what are the strategies, teachers can employ or people can employ to acquire leadership skills. And I do hope that, while watching, you got one or two things away from education. These are things that are applicable to all aspects of life. And so that's our gift to you this morning. Embrace it, own it, invest, and when you have value most definitely will come to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Toyin.